Right, we are live on Facebook. Good evening, Nigeria. Good evening, everyone joining us from everywhere. My name is Godwin Oguche, the anchor of Gomnet TV, the Godwin Oguche Media Network. And it's a pleasure to be here this beautiful Tuesday evening. I believe that you had a beautiful day. We are on with our earlier announced discussion is part of the programming for Nigeria at 61. Is actually the first in the series of our programming for Nigeria at 61. It's a series of discussions that we want to hold with respect to how we can change the narrative and look at the positive aspects of how we can begin to turn the tide in Nigeria, because as it were, we are completely at the precipice, as it were. It's difficult to even begin to put words to the situation that we face right now. But like the dry bones in the valley of Ezekiel, Ezekiel asked a question: can these dry bones? It was God who asked Ezekiel, "Can these dry bones live?" And he said, "Only you knows." And he said, "Speak to the dry bones." And so the narrative of every society changes when people can have meaningful conversations, speak to the issues, and begin to change the dynamics of what goes into the ears and the minds of a people. And so that's the reason why it's critical that we are taking this initiative at the Godwin Oguche Media Network, otherwise known as Gomnet TV. And we are going to run this series till the end of the week. We're having the first one now. Another one is coming up on Thursday, rather. And then a day after Independence, we'll have the third one. And so I have with me a crack team of experts in their own field, but they are nation builders, they are patriots who are burning desires in their hearts concerning the evolution and the growth of Nigeria. So, as we turn 61 as an independent nation, this government is setting up all kinds of structures, all kinds of putting up all kinds of activities to mark the event. But the truth is that we desire that as a group of persons who are patriots, we want to redirect the narratives, the negative narratives of all the challenges we're facing as we seek to set a hope agenda and proffer solutions to the myriads of problems that we have. Like I mentioned earlier to my panelists behind the cameras, we are going to act as a shadow government, as it were, in discussing these matters and try to make meaning out of the issues in the first instance, and then address them with practical solutions as it should be. And so if you hear me asking Dr. Mo, for instance, if you were to be the president of Nigeria, what would you do? So you shouldn't be surprised that he might speak to the issues as a current president and proffer solutions. So our discussion panelists are here, as you can see on your screen. We have Dr. Moses Paul. He is a management and leadership consultant. He is a social activist and the team lead of the craziest church on the planet. Trust me, the My Church community in Abuja, Nigeria. Dr. Mo, you're welcome to Gomnet TV. I can't hear you. Your audio is muted.
Can you hear me now, sir?
Yes, I can hear you. Omotola's audio is also muted.
Okay. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. I'm so happy to be here tonight to share in the discussion, national discourse.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Mo. We also have Omotola Fawumi. She's a breakthrough learning facilitator with multiple channels of expressions, as it were. She's currently a graduate student of the organizational leadership at the Center for Business Leadership, Eastern University in Pennsylvania, USA, but she is based in Maryland in the United States. Omotola, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Incidentally, Omotola is in the same state with our next guest that I want to introduce. He is Dr. Michael Olagberu, a medical doctor who has a passion for development medicine, besides being a Nigerian patriot, who has been in the forefront of the rebirth of a Nigerian nation. He's also based in Maryland. I was asking Michael Omotola earlier if he has, run into you somewhere around Maryland before.
Not yet.
Thank you, Pastor Godwin, for what you do, and thank you for inviting me to part of this discussion. I am sure I might have walked behind Omotola on a queue at one of the stores without any one of us knowing.
That's right.
Or she went to fill her tank and she went just ahead of me, or I ahead of her.
It's all right. So we have to start out the discussion right now. We have 4 thematic areas we're looking at. We're looking at politics, policies, and governance. We're also looking at social revolution and evolution, attitudinal change, and mindset reset for the citizens of Nigeria. We're also looking at education, human capital development, and building capacity for the future. The 4th thematic area we're looking at is economic revival, and we're focusing more on the youth engagement and other critical drivers of our economy, what stimulates economic growth generally. And so our discussants will make meaning out of all that we're talking about. And I ask you to be free. You can contribute across different questions. So let's get this started. And I'm starting with ladies first, as it is said. So Omotola, you're doing us the honor of kicking off the discussion right now. Now, Nigeria is in dire need of purposeful leadership without sounding like a broken record. The last 6 years has obviously exposed our lack of direction from the leadership angle as a nation. Having this in mind, what direction do you think, or do you believe our politics should take going into the next election cycle? What policy should political actors focus on in terms of developing agenda for the next dispensation of tenure in leadership, and how should governance take a new course going forward in Nigeria? Omotola.
Thank you very much, Pastor Godwin. Once again, it's an honor and a privilege to be invited here to share, to speak. And the question you've raised is a very important question, and I've had to answer this over and over again. So I'll try not to give you an answer I've given before, because we get better with new information. One of the things I've said is that right now we shouldn't be looking at the next election, but look at the election after the next election.
Okay.
Because if we look at the next election is just a few years away, and we have that attitude of being reactionary. What happens when you react to things is that you are not able to properly process what needs to be done, how it needs to be done. You don't have enough time to train who needs to be trained to engage properly. So I'm not really looking forward to the next election, if you ask me. I'm saying, let us prepare for the election after the next election. And I look at maybe over the next 10 years. It might seem far-fetched, but we're almost there. This is 2021. If we did this 10 years ago in 2010, we probably won't be where we are now.
Absolutely.
For 2011. So I would say the reason why we have not very good leadership right now is because a lot of people have gotten into leadership positions without adequate leadership training, without adequate leadership knowledge, and then there is no sanction for bad leadership.
Wow, that's true.
So when there is no punishment for bad behavior, we inadvertently aid it. So there has to be sanction for bad behavior. There has to be a process that is easy for us to identify what a good leader looks like, what a bad leader looks like, and the speed of time to get a bad leader out should be cut short. So we don't want a lot of meandering. That aside, I said the next 10 years we need to prepare. That means preparing from the grassroots. That means encouraging civic education. A lot of voters who go out to vote are voting as civic illiterates. How many people have ever read the Constitution? So on what basis are you even appointing or doing or even supporting a legislator? Let me digress. Last Tuesday, I was standing in as an advocate for increased funding for malaria in the state of Maryland. It's a project by the UN Foundation, and we were elected about, I can't remember how many volunteers, but we were volunteering and advocating for increased funding for the Presidential Malaria Initiative, which was asking for increased funding from $820 million to $902 million. I had to speak to two members of House of Rep and 3 senators. And when I finished, I said, look, I'm advocating for increased funding for malaria in the state of Maryland. I did it in Delaware in April. I can't even get to my senator in Nigeria.
Wow.
So those are the issues. What is the communication? How do we engage? How do we, beyond just joining political parties, which are good, but how is policy even communicated so that the person, the 18-year-old in my village in Igbajo in Osun State, who is just leaving secondary school, who is about to have her first opportunity to vote, on what basis is she making that vote? So education at the grassroots level, all we educated people cannot afford to just be commenting on Twitter, and we need to get down into community and do real work. Let me stop here.
All right. As engaging and as practical as ever, Motola, thank you so much for that. We will come back to you. Dr. Moses Paul, you're right in the seat of Nigeria's political power in Abuja. You're experiencing the real issues of politics and how it is negatively impacting on our policies and governance. If you were a Nigerian president who has 8 years starting today to run our affairs, how would you attend to the issues of politics side by side with making right policies for good governance?
Thank you. First of all, I think the challenge is with the kind of politics we engage or we run in Africa and in Nigeria, which is essentially driven by what we call the stomach infrastructure. It's highly driven by religious sentiment, tribal and parochial sentiment. This in turn influences the kind of policies that are driven, which is in turn seen as the governance or the government that we have of the day. Because policies in themselves are just the principles that give hope and help to guide our decisions that result into the positive outcome that enhances the different units that we have in government. So that's the challenge, and that has become what we see today. If I were the president, given this backdrop and the deep understanding of where we are, politically in Nigeria, it would be easy, because again, looking at my experience and some of the people that I went to school with, the first thing I would do is to ensure that as a political office holder, if you're a public office holder in Nigeria, your children will go to public schools, across board, because once that happens, there will be the gap that is created by religion, by class, and by ethnicity will be broken. We can see that in the 70s and even in the 80s. Once that happened, it will drive the public school policy. Our public schools will be revamped. It will be automatic, and that can happen. I would ensure that as a president, I would not seek to go to any country for my hospital checkup and keeping up. We would ensure that every public holder, an office holder, every politician go to and do his medical or hospital checkup here in the country. That will also apply to the cars, your furnitures, everything, your clothing. We will come back to made in Nigeria, mentality. That will be the things that will drive some of these policies. So our education, the institutions that we have, because essentially what we need, once you do that, what is going to happen is that because the country is badly needs a perception shift. Good governance and performance can do a very quick fix. And once that happens, then we can begin to build a long-term. It will be automatic, honestly. I give you an example. Look at 2015. Here in Abuja, politicians and public office holders, they all kept their dollars and monies in holes in their houses because they were sure that once President Muhammadu Buhari came in, because of the perception that they had, that perception was going to drive policies that and people across board, so this is how to drive the policy. And I can almost go on and on this, because policies, they give birth to the perceptions that are created, the policies that are driven. Once you are able to connect the dot, between religion, ethnicity, and the class barrier, which you can see in terms of how you conduct what you do, automatically, I am telling you, it's going to work like magic, because Nigeria is set to do that already. This was the missing link. But when the president came in and we could see directly that his body language were not tarrying with the policies in place. For example, but what I'm saying is that of Nigeria, even if I'm going to pick somebody backdrop of what is already known, I will pick a northern Christian and put the person in strategic position. And when I'm picking, yes, even though you're making selection around the country, what we need to do, because these are perceptions and our policies, and we already know there is no point driving this already fractured country that we have into the abyss like he's done with the current. Once there are policies that I'm going to put in place, like the public school, like the health, like the community, engagement, that once somebody is speaking, you are not seeing a Christian, you are not seeing a Muslim, you are not seeing a Yoruba man, an Igbo man. Those policies that cuts across, that closes this gap, I'm telling you, Nigeria is going to work like crazy. If you go to Maiduguri, pharmacies that has existed there for 25 years, everybody goes to the pharmacy to get drugs. Nobody cares whether he's an Igbo man. These are the kinds of ideologies that will drive the policy. way
Wow.
Abiola and Tofa came in. They were both Muslims, but Nigeria didn't think about it. There are policies that can cut across this divide, that people will not begin to, this parochial thinking will completely be removed. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put policies, and I'm going to, because the moment you perform, nobody is thinking that you are a thief man or an Idoma man, a Fulani man. Nobody cares. Performance. And there are policies and there are things that can help, you know. And once you put that in place, most of our current leaders today, they all went to Catholic missionary schools. Nobody cared. These are the things I'm talking about. It can be done, and we can change the trajectory that we are right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Mo. I will address you as such from now.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Michael Olagbenro, you have been here. All right, you are now in the diaspora, and you have been very. Even though I'm actually trying to get used to that anyway. I'm trying to get used to that. I just want to wake up tomorrow and see you at Dala Orthopedic Hospital.
It's possible.
Yeah. Okay. You have been very. Yes. Let me hear you out.
Oh, I said through a virtual link.
You have been very engaged in the Nigerian project, even from when you were here. What are your practical solutions and hope agenda for today's Nigeria in view of where we have been, where we are now, and where we should be going?
Thank you, sir. I will try to be brief, but at the same time succinct. One, permit me to say that in some measure, I am someone you might consider as it were, a Christian fundamentalist, because my faith drives the principles of my philosophy and of my politics. So I am going to start from that point. And I will start by saying, looking at the term hope itself, a lot of times, most of us, or in general usage, the term hope has come to mean something like the way people say amen. When it is something you don't expect, you say you hope for it. You hope it might happen because there are things that will not make it happen. But I want to go back to the root meaning of that term hope. That root meaning is similar to what we call in Christianity as blessed assurance. It's a definitive certainty, a strong and confident anticipation of something that we want. That is what hope is. And why am I interested in hope? I have been interested in hope because of Romans 5. You see where it says that now, having been fully justified by grace through Christ, we have peace with God. Then it goes on and says, but hope does not make ashamed, because the love of God is spread abroad in our hearts by the Holy Ghost. Now, that is where I'm going to, and that is the basis for what I'm going to say next. Our expectations can be certain. Now, this is not wishful thinking. This is not fanciful thinking. I want us to go back to the beginning of what we know today as Nigeria, particularly before independence. When you look at the people that came up eventually as the three major actors, His Excellency Right Honorable Nnamdi Azikiwe, the Prince himself, Sadana Sokoto, and the erudite legal luminary Obafemi Awolowo, and you read through their biographies, you read through their speeches, you will note that there was a fundamental idea of what a nation should be, of what a people should be, that drove them. If you look at the initial paragraphs of our constitutions, particularly the ones, even the ones that the military government gave us, you see something that are called the fundamental directives of state. So I am not speaking out of the blues. We have these principles in place. What practical things will I do? Number one, I am going to completely lose hope in all of the current political actors. Because believe me, all the current political actors, as far as I know, and as far as their works can tell, even if they had much to offer, are unable to do much. And the vast majority simply don't have much to offer. You simply have to listen to what people in National Assembly say, listen to what State House of Assembly members say, listen to the level of lack of intelligence, for the lack of a better word, at what people in our local government councils say, and then you ask yourself, what kind of output do you expect from this conceptual and mental input? So I'll completely lose hope in them. The next thing to be done, obviously, goes back to what the first two said. On practical terms, we need, if you recall, Pastor Godwin, back in 2011, we led an initiative to try to win some 500,000 votes in Kano. And if you recall what I told the team then, I said, forget about what society has told us about certain people not voting and this and that. Let us go street by street and make people who normally will not vote simply express their opinion by vote. People need to be reached where they live. And what are the practical ways to do this? One is what we call participatory democracy. I have a mentor for this, Senator Peter Adeyemo. He's now out of the Senate. He was in the Senate 1999, 2003, Obasanjo's first tenure. And it was one senator that I simply saw the signpost to his office. I entered the office. I spoke with him on phone. And from UCH Ibadan, I had access to his house, his driver, and his personal assistant at National Assembly Abuja for 1 week without meeting him, because he was the senator for my constituency. And this was someone that had what he used to call Akitiyan senator, which in English means what the senator do. He comes back every week, every 2 weeks to the constituency and sits down with everybody and says, okay, what is happening? How does this translate to federal law? And the federal law that we have, this is how it translates to what you do locally. So, participatory democracy. However, the idea of democracy presupposes that what you have are citizens. I'm sorry, but most of persons that currently are in Nigeria are residents of Nigeria, not citizens of Nigeria. And there can be no democracy without citizens. That was why, if you look at the ancient times, the empires that prospered were those that had citizens as soldiers. And once those empires began using slaves and other people as soldiers, they declined, because it takes a citizen to want to defend a nation or a set of values and principles. So we need to start building citizens, and then we need to build a proper democracy. In closing, some years back, 2002 October, I was in the Ibarapa Community Project of UCH in Igbora. And my favorite place in that entire experience was the library. Then when we got back to UCH and we're having some clinical postings, I passed the comment to my group and to one of my professors. And I said, you know what? The body of knowledge in that library, in that village in Igbora, that was available to Nigeria as at 1977 was adequate to solve the majority of the health problems of Nigeria. And that was in 2002. And believe me, this is almost 20 years after, the knowledge of 1977 is still adequate to solve the problems. What to do is clear. But we must first build citizens before we can build a democracy. And that is where the work of leadership comes in. Thank you, sir.
All right. This is another body of knowledge that every Nigerian must take advantage of. And that's why this is going on online in several channels, in several mediums. So I'd like to thank my guest again. And if you're just joining us, we're having a conversation on setting the new hope agenda for Nigeria. And my guests are Dr. Moses Paul from Abuja, Omotala Fawumi from the United States, precisely in Maryland, and another Maryland resident, Dr. Michael Olagbenro. Now, let's look at the second thematic issue, and it is on social revolution stroke evolution, attitudinal change, and mindset reset for the Nigerian citizen. Dr. Michael had already started talking about the responsibility of citizenship. And I'd like to go first with Omotola on this subject. Again, Nigeria today is fractured and divided along ethnic and religious lines. Like some of the comments that have been coming in since we started from our viewers have been talking about the fact that we will be a better country if there is religious tolerance. We have never been as divided as we are today. As a leader or an advisor of leaders, what will be your first line of action in uniting the country under one common vision? How should we reinvent a new society to line up with or line up behind a common national target? Because as it were, Nigeria does not have a national vision that everybody buys into. How may we have a mindset and attitudinal change in view of the high level of apathetic nature of the average Nigerian citizen today as far as governance is concerned?
Thank you very much for that very good question. And as you were sharing, what kept coming to my mind is there seems to be a difference. We are a country, but we have not yet evolved into a nation. I'm hoping and I'm looking forward to a time where we can have a vision that won't just be written as, Vision 2020, Vision 2010, but something that can be carried, that can be owned. And the way a leader can get their followers or disciples to own a vision is to believe that vision themselves. It's only when they believe the vision, they communicate the vision, and not as a grandiose idea, but as something that can be broken down into practical timelines and milestones that are measurable. Because sometimes some of these visions are grandiose, and like the heart knows when you're lying. So when we set a vision that's out of place, the mind just like, this is impossible, especially if the leader doesn't tell us how we will get there. So how can we be united to answer the question? We need to determine what is important to us as a nation, not what is important to the United Nations, not what is important to another nation. What do we need? What do we need? What is important to us as a continent, as Nigeria? So right now, our priorities should not be the priorities of developed nations. We should look at our fundamentals. We don't have regular power. How can we fix power? We don't have, our educational system is broken down. We can't continue to fuel systems or set ideas that are not homegrown. So, it's good that people want to buy gadgets, but I always tell people, whatever gadgets you buy, if you have less than 8 hours of power, it's a waste of time and resources. So, okay, you have DSTV. DSTV, you can only watch for 4 hours a day. How does that make you rich? You are poor. Until we see that our collective poverty is affecting everybody, and we can't afford to have trickles of rich people or comfortable people, and the majority are suffering. Until, and that needs to be modeled by the people who claim to be leaders or who have been given the responsibility of leadership. It can't be outsourced. Citizens should not have to fight for their rights. People fight for their rights when you have irresponsible leaders. we can't. So, let's break it down. Let me go street by street. One of my projects in Nigeria was a community resource center. And I recall, I think we went to set it up around 2015. And as educated and as an advocate as I used to think I was, there are so many things I didn't know. One of those things was in our local, it was a center for women and girls. And every Monday we would gather the women and teach them basic business management skills. Then one of them said, Madam, all these things you are teaching us, some opportunities are available at the local government and states. Am I even aware those meetings are happening? And I said, no. This lady who told me was my hairdresser in that community. She was an Igbo woman who was the ward secretary. She had, at the time I knew her, had opened opportunity for at least 300 women to learn different skills under the Lagos state government, different opportunities, which I educated, I was not even aware of. Wow. So cosmetology and a whole lot of things. But where am I going? The local government apparently used to have a meeting every last Wednesday of the month. And I started attending that meeting. It's called the Joint Community Development, Joint CDA meeting. And it was when I started attending that meeting, I had an understanding of, what I would say, the arrogance of the elite that puts the supposed elite or supposed educated person in a position of, the word is not incompetence. It's not coming to my head now, but I'll come, where we are disadvantaged, in a disadvantaged position when it comes to voting. So our leaders need to share a vision that people can see. Our leaders need to itemize and break this vision down. In the case of that lady, if I just looked at her and said, oh, she's a hairdresser that comes to my meeting, I didn't know how many people she was controlling. She was in charge of at least her ward. As ward secretary, she was in charge of more than 3,000 or 4,000 people. And they meet regularly every Sunday evening. So when I was begging her, please come to house for this, she said, Madam, I can't come. This is my work. She's a hairdresser. She's controlling 3,000 people. And some people are on Twitter just making noise. It can't work. Mm. We need to engage. We need to break it down. We need to find, and people, they are the ones who are willing to die for the politicians because the politicians speak their language. At these meetings, what do they share? They share 1 derica of rice every meeting. 1 derica, sometimes 2, with 2 onions. But you see, their needs are being met. So our leaders need to be, nobody wants to follow a leader who shows up once in a while. You want a leader who is engaged, whose vision you can own a portion of. Because you see, as individuals, we all like to win, even if it is winning a portion of someone's winning. So if our leaders can show us, okay, if I vote for you on my street, if I campaign for you on my street, it's not what is our collective dividend. So if we've been fixing our cars because our road is broken, if I campaign for you, is that a promise that our road will be permanently fixed? Is that a promise that our drainages will, you understand? People want to win. But the visions that our leaders set are not our visions. They are not visions people can buy into. I hope this is clear. Let me stop here.
That is epic. All right, Dr. Moses Paul, and for the sake of our audience and my other guest, Dr. Moses Paul is actually known as Mad Mo Paul. He's a mad man.
I follow him on Facebook. I know you. Oh, yes.
He's a mad Mo of Abuja. All right, we'll get to that. So the average Nigerian believes, Dr. Mo, that this country is a goner. That it is finished. It has become part of our language lexicon, our language pattern. As a matter of fact, when I posted the promotion for this program online, somebody commented beneath it and said that, brother, forget it, Nigeria is gone. And I had to reply with some positive thoughts to douse that kind of negative narrative. So what can you do as a leader, as a president, 8 years in fixing this national fracture in the mind, and how can you make Nigerians believe in Nigeria again?
You know, as dangerous as the narrative is, as bad as our image has become internationally and even at home, as you know, as edgy as we all have become, there is no time I've ever had hope, ever. You know, listening to Dr. Michael setting the stage for when he talked about Awo, Zeke, and Sir Ahmadu Bello. These guys, of all of them, I think it was only Zeke that was just about 41 or so, which is much younger than a lot of us. All the other people were just their youth. I did not only participate, but caused some of the things that led to the NSAS that we saw today. I led the protest in Abuja. My life was on the line several times, you know. And with that backdrop, I can tell you that with everything that you see, this is the biggest time as a leader. It will be the quick fix that we are going to have because of the nature of Nigerians generally. The NSAS showed one thing very clear. For the first time since the history of Nigeria, young people, they organized themselves, they picked after themselves, they were courageous, they were bold, you know, day and night. They showed that they have the ingenuity to raise funds regardless of whatever structure that is known to the present day leadership. They had to be disrupted, almost like what happens in Genesis 11. You know, when God himself said, there is nothing no one, including myself, would do because these people were one. When the Muslims were praying, we, the Christians, held hand and surrounded them. And same thing happened while we prayed. Many of them, because of my stature, didn't know that they were about my children, you know, but we were in the field. We fed ourselves both in Abuja and in Lagos. We kept the street clean. We took care of the traffic. I can say here boldly because it's on record, given what happened even with the committee that sat in Lagos, you know, that the government of the day had people within themselves who sponsored the hoodlums, who paid them. I saw them live. I have evidence. So it can be said even on the platform like this. You know, when we had people came over on us with machetes and all kinds of things, burning, you know, cars and all over. And I had to tell the people to disperse here in Abuja. It showed one thing very clearly, that the young people are more than willing and ready and have gone beyond the rhetoric of being given power. As I'm talking to you, what we're doing right now and what we continue to do is to see how, because energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be channeled. You know, as a leader, Nigeria is so energetic. The anger, the passion, the hatred, and everything we see, they are all energy. All we need to do is just a channeling, and it can be done swiftly and quickly. This is the hope that I have, and that's why for some of us, we can't wait for 2023. It's like this 20 months that my president had to spend is almost like 20 years. I am more hopeful. And that even for those, and I will say it here, even for those who checked out of the country, they have to check out for safety. They are willing to come back, and we are winning disciples every day from Facebook to Clubhouse to meetings like this. I am telling you, the night is so dark, but the darkest as the night. That's how some of the young people are waiting for light. And they are more than willing to sacrifice. So I can tell you something, whether you talk about in terms of the economy, we know what to do. If I become the president today, I don't need a salary. As a local government chairman, as a governor, I don't need a salary. I know there are resources all over the world. People do not even understand the power of political leadership. What you cannot garner, what you cannot pull together. You know, I have lined up practical secrets. As a local government chairman, you can revolutionize that local government if we take you through some training. There are resources begging and waiting all over the world. As a governor, you can change the narrative of the state forever. This is what we can do. And I tell you what, I am more hopeful about Nigeria than ever before because the young people are ready. All I will do as a president is to channel the energy. More than half of the population of Nigeria are young people. We can drive the agriculture sector. We can drive the mining sector. What we have right now are just charlatans who have no vision, much less to even ask people to follow through. The country is begging. The country is begging for simple visionary leadership, to be able to, even with agriculture alone, we can revive the narrative of Nigeria. I don't even need all the thematic areas, just one thing alone, and as we talk on, we will reveal some of the things, but I'm just using the pilot case of NSAS to tell the world and to tell all those that are watching here that to change the narrative is nothing because the energy is so ripe. And these young people are willing. So the one thing we are doing right now is to see how we can convert the energy of the NSAS into votable products. Because once we can do that, come 2023, we're going to have a vibrant president who will more than articulate a vision and allow the young people to run with it. This and more is what I'm going to do. Nigeria in 10 years, in 8 years exactly, can be within the Committee of Nations.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I am fired up. I am really fired up. Okay, Dr. Michael Olagberu, from the standpoint of someone who should carry on a campaign of national reorientation, what would you say to the nation about getting Nigeria back on our feet? What should government do to buy back the trust of the people, which is obviously breached?
Thank you so much, sir. Your question segues from the earlier questions you've asked my co-panelists. And two things. What will I say? What will I communicate? And secondly, how do I make the Nigerians gain confidence? I am glad you said gain confidence because there are some people that when you see them outside of the country, you know that actually there's a confidence in the nation and in leadership, in the leadership of the nation has been lost. However, at the most fundamental level, if I were to have a chance to do this, number one is to ensure that we have a mechanism in place for making leadership accountable. And I'll give you something that is very simple. Let us go back to children in primary school and secondary school. In my primary school, I was elected as a senior prefect. Classes have monitors. Monitors write names of those who are noisemakers or who are making the floor dirty. If the monitor only writes names of those who are not his or her friend, the classmates lose confidence in the monitor. But when the monitor is responsible, responsive, and can be disciplined, the pupils have confidence. If children below the age of 12 understand that basic principle, then it tells you what happens at a bigger level. Secondly, is that I've always said this, and I'm glad that our First Lady also mentioned it. Development is always local. When you drive from Kano to Owerri at 1 a.m., there are very few places, or you're driving from Tulokoja to Okene or to anywhere in Nigeria, there are very few places where you see a signpost. And by looking at the signpost of a hairdresser, you know what local government you are in. Basic things like that are where development starts locally. So to get Nigeria back on our feet, I am not going to do something as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, as it were. What I am going to do is to acknowledge that in the 9,000 plus wards of Nigeria, there are different people at different stations of life who are leaders. I will use the example of my street in Kano, Court Road by Zoo Road. That road, before it was dualized, was always jam-packed. And there's a particular man that had been there since 2009 or 8. I was back in Kano 2020 March, and I still saw that man on that road. For 11 years, he's there every day. He's unpaid. Whenever the traffic builds up, he coordinates the Almajiri, and they go 100 meters down each arm of the road and begin to coordinate traffic. That tells you that in our 9,000 plus wards, there's leadership. What I will do is to mobilize that leadership and to empower that leadership and to structure that leadership. One of the principles of I own and run a foundation, the Michael Lagbakin Foundation, and one of our foundational principles is what we call care. That care is CCARE with an exclamation mark. And what does it mean? Citizen and community awareness and responsibility everywhere. That is what I am going to focus on to reorientate Nigerians. Before a country exists, communities exist. Before communities exist, individuals exist. Communities exist because individuals come together to live together. When I was growing up in Oshobo back then in Alekuwodo, when there was an increase in the spate of burglaries, what happened? Every male aged 16 to 21 was drafted to man the streets at night. So each street of the Alekuwodo area each flat has your quota per week. And when it's time you go out, we didn't involve the police force, and there were no burglaries, and there were no armed robberies. Why? Because we became aware that as communities, we should be responsible individuals in those communities, and we took responsibility and we did something. And I'll use the case of malaria, since my first lady had mentioned malaria. While I was in Dala 2009, I had the course to deliver a paper, but part of my department was presenting on malaria. And I told them, I said, if you make me Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces today, within 10 years, I'll get malaria out of Nigeria. I thought if the Romans, 400 years before Christ came, could eliminate malaria in modern-day Morocco, it tells you that getting malaria to go doesn't even require modern civilization. We should let that sink in. These problems that have bedeviled Nigeria, and Nigeria loses more than 500 billion naira to malaria annually. And I've not counted, you can't value life that is lost or potential earnings over a lifetime of a 5-year-old. So we've not even gone to that. We can't value mental anguish. What has the Nigerian system focused on? We depend, my apologies, I love my colleagues who've been to Harvard, but like I tell all of them who are in the public health space who are sponsored by NGOs in Nigeria, they are the problem of Nigeria. Because to solve malaria, whose solution lies in community street hygiene and safe water.
Thank you.
Does not require me going to a conference in Washington, D.C.
Thank you.
or in Rome. Does not require me emphasizing that we need to buy mosquito-treated nets and distribute to pregnant women.
True.
Two things happen when you focus that way. One is that you shift responsibility from those who are responsible. When you shift responsibility, two things happen. The people who are meant to hold them accountable take their eyes off them and assume the problem is insurmountable. The people who are meant to be responsible say, well, I have an easy way out. If there's a national malaria program, if Bill Gates has to come to Kano to infuriate Dangote before he can contribute to vaccination in his country.
Mm-hmm.
Then I should just wait for VAT from Abuja and wait for 13% derivation and wait for allocation. I don't have to be responsible. Yeah. Now, in practical terms, time will not permit me to go into details of this. But you see, I keep using leadership, healthcare, and development because they are intertwined. The level of development of any nation can be defined by how much health it's able to deliver to its people. Mm-hmm. The reason why we don't focus on health is because health is seen as an expense item. However, I have just told you how to solve malaria. Do you realize that apart from volunteers, I am going to need in every street of Nigeria somebody whose job it is to clear the gutters? That is a job. That job can be paid. Why am I convinced it can be paid? Have you been to the bus parks in Kano, Ungwauku, in Abuja at Jabi, in Oshogbo, Omuaran, in Owerri? They are touts. And before you go out of these places, you pay between 50 naira to 200 naira per vehicle. Those kind of funds are available to pay a minimal salary to this, if I won't call it salary, stipends to these persons who are volunteers. It keeps them engaged. It's part of an economic value chain. Allows you to take data and streamline the process. In Ibadan, 2018 January, a road transporter confided in me that at least 7 million naira, if you go pass in front of UI, you see those touts, they will script something on the bus's windshield before you're able to go. That collection totals at least 7 million naira daily.
Wow.
Do you know what that can fund? Why do you think all state governors keep a stranglehold on NURTW? Because it's cash flow. It's the easiest form of money laundering. Money flows. So what I would do is take development back to where it belongs. Streets, communities, and localities. It is the aggregation and systematization of those community needs that becomes government at the local government, state government level, and at the federal government level. That is when things will work. Obasanjo, in fairness to him, got frustrated and began trying to build primary health care in every local government area, deducting money directly from local government allocations, because the local government chairman simply will not do it. Almost every street in Nigeria now has a patent medicine store. That is a sign of a profound failure of primary health care. However, as in every crisis, there's danger and opportunity. What I will do is tell Nigerians, see, I am not denying the fact. I am standing with my 2 feet on solid earth, not ideas floating in the space. The problems are real, but Nigerians are realer. The problems are real, but the solutions are definite. The answer will not come in 1 year. The answer will not come in 1 election cycle. And I'll use the case of China to buttress my point. The current president of China, a year or 2 ago, got a second term to his 10-year tenure. Something was very interesting to me at the assembly of the party when he was chosen for that second tenure. In fact, for his first tenure. Number 1, the 2 presidents before him were present. That means more than 30 years of institutional knowledge was present in that room to decide who the next president will be. Do you get what that means?
Sustainability.
So it meant an idea that we agree on 30 years ago, which we measure every 2 to 5 years. Every 10 years, choosing a new president, we are looking at those ideas and saying what next needs to be done. There's a reason why ladders have rungs approximately 15 to 45 centimeters apart and not 2 meters apart. Take the first step, measure. Take the next step, measure. I will tell Nigerians, all those who have promised you that in 1 year, 1 naira and $1 will be equal, while the naira is driving in reverse. They've been lying to you. Why should Michael Opara from 1940s to when he got to government campaign with the same thing that the current people campaigning for governorship in Anambra State are still campaigning with? Abba, Meya Faru, Kilode. It tells you that we've missed it. It's not highfalutin ideas. The problems are highfalutin, maybe. But when we deconstruct the problems, it becomes straightforward. In closing this statement, I want to remind us to say that this is possible. Have you heard of lake rice? Lagos seems to be the benchmark of whatever is good in Nigerian government, as in power as it is these days. Do you note that Lagos state government knows it lives in a lagoon? Kebbi State is impoverished. Kebbi State has farmers. When I tried to farm in Kano, where I hit the rocks, was that, in fairness to them, a 60-something-year-old man who has 4 wives and 19 children and has only 1 hectare of land, by the time he divides the land among his 21 sons, everybody has half an acre. Everybody's back to subsistence farming. What can work is bring them together as a cooperative and get that 1 hectare, 100 hectares back, which was what the Kebbi State government did. Kebbi is impoverished. Lagos invested seed money, about 50-something or so billion naira in Kebbi State. And note this, that money went to the farmers on the streets, on the farms, for input and all of that. And within 2 years, as of that time, the naira dollar equivalent, the value of the trade in that rice was over $1 billion, over 360 billion naira. That came to, and when the local man now saw that when he farms rice, he's able to buy stuff for his wives. Some married more wives, but remember, some Kebbi State youth who would have been called uneducated became scientific. My point is their mentality shifted.
Changed.
When they saw direct results, that what they did brought back results. Do you remember there was that challenge where they counted the grains of rice in a bag of rice? People were arguing how many grains of rice should be. They said, let's not argue, let's be objective. So they sat down and counted grain by grain the number of grains in a bag of rice. People that begin to do that subconsciously begin to reason. They move from assumptions to logic, to observing facts. That is what proper leadership can do. So that's what I will communicate to the people. It will not take time in the next election, because the laws that should have been reviewed, I mean, look at the issue of VAT. The laws that should have been reviewed since 1987. Each successive National Assembly comes in place and leaves them unreviewed. The ones that should have been reviewed for 19 years don't get passed until people are bribed in dollars and Samsung iPhones and gold phones. And then the laws are non-functional. So I'm not thinking of next election cycle. Change takes 1 generation at least to happen. Look at the Bible, 30 to 40 years. Look at China, 30 years. Look at America, where I am now. That process took time. But the journey that we complete is the one that we started. If we say that the journey is too far and we don't leave our street, nothing will get done. I cannot get to Aso Rock. I cannot be in Mapo or in Ibadan and be asking Madmo for direction to Aso Rock. I will be a madman indeed. The first thing I should do is get on the road in front of Mapo Hall and get to the bus park to Abuja. That is the first step. Let us take the first step. Let us do it in the right direction. Do it consistently. Once we get the basic things right, and the processes and systems are in place, we should keep our head up. We should keep our hope up. It's like a child that has to write WAEC, but there's no NEPA. If he consistently makes sure he uses the hours of daylight to read and understand what he can, it's only a matter of time. He will know enough to get an A in WAEC. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Michael Olagbenro. We have 2 more thematic areas to cover, and I am scared for time. And so what we're going to do is to answer our questions and discuss our issues as panelists within 3 minutes. And but with that, we will just wrap up in the next couple of minutes. The next thematic area I would like to look at is education, human capital development, building capacity for the future. So I'll go to you, Omotola. Nigeria's rating in education is so abysmal compared to other nations of the world. Even within sub-Saharan Africa, Nigeria's rating is so low. We are actually far behind in terms of standards. Our graduates from the universities are like glorified high school students. How can we change this narrative? Through deliberate governance policies in the education sector. What should government and institutions responsible for the education of a nation begin to do on a short, medium, and long-term basis? Omotola.
Thank you very much for this very important question. And permit me, because I happen to be a graduate of History and International Relations, I will begin with that. No education is complete if you keep running to the future without taking cognizance of what happened in the past. A lot of the problems that we even have as a country is because of lack of documented history, incomplete history, thwarted history, and then I think under, I can't remember which president now, history was completely eliminated from the curriculum. So if we don't take a look at the past, how do we move forward? Another is those who are responsible for teaching us, those who sign up to be teachers. We complain about the output of education, which are the graduates, but the people who taught us when we were younger, if I recall, when I was younger, my mom is a teacher. She retired as a vice principal of a secondary school. She retired in 2015, but she still goes to teach in a college of education because she loves teaching. A lot of those who take on the teaching job in our schools, I won't say in the universities, let me not go there, but let me just settle with the primary and secondary school for now. A lot of them are those who did not exactly love education. They don't like to educate people, but they did not pass JAMB, so they couldn't get into the university. They didn't pass poly JAMB, so they couldn't get into a polytechnic. So one auntie, one uncle said, try teacher training. And so the requirement for teacher training, I grew up to hear, is low. So you go into a teacher training college. And then after teacher training, they're deployed to schools. So tell me, how are they supposed to teach something they joined because they didn't have an option? That's where I'll start from. So we need to find out how we're hiring. One of my housemates here was a 3rd grade math teacher. See, every night when she came home, we were always talking about her students, what she wants to get done for them, how she was trying to teach them through the pandemic. And I would tell her, like, you really love your students. You are in love. She said, I need them to know these things. I'm like, I went to secondary school, my boarding school. I'm not sure we had teachers that like took our responsibility and were worrying about it back home. You see? So how are we hiring our teachers? How are we training them? Then those who develop the curriculum, what are the standards? What goes into what is taught? We can't afford to just teach what somebody has written down. I was punished, I recall, in my 200 level when I was given an assignment for it was an international relations course. I did history and international relations, and it was around about the MDGs. The MDGs had just come out, I think, in 2000, and this was maybe 2002 or so. So there was an analysis. They gave us a question to answer, and I recall responding because I had listened to BBC and VOA that night. Two people talking about this subject. I submitted my paper and my lecturer failed me. And I was very upset, like, this is what I heard in the news. This is current. He said, well, I didn't teach you that. You give me back what I gave you. This is practical. He's my friend on Facebook. He's probably watching me. But this is true. And I recall myself and another friend, because, we both failed that particular assignment. Not because our answers were wrong, but because someone was set in his ways as to how he said, look, I didn't teach you that. I know, yes, I'm not saying it's wrong, but I didn't teach you that. So I was thinking, why then am I a student if I'm not supposed to contribute to the body of knowledge or add to knowledge? So you see, even how we are taught, how a student is perceived, what's the curiosity, it's killed. And somebody said, I remember someone says, look, I've been teaching these things since 1992. This is the curriculum I've been teaching. And I was worried, like, this was 2002. 1992 and 2002. That means that there's no knowledge hasn't progressed since then. So it's at all levels. What should they do? Maybe, let me say, for those responsible for education, both at the federal level meaning government, ministries, and in the house, the legislators, can we have real people that actually read? That actually, those policies that can read through them, that can make marks, that can, so that what is eventually presented can be useful. Can we have, let me use in local government, I like talking local governments a lot because that's where the poorest of the poor have easy access to. Can we have at the local governments access to basic things like a library? Something as simple as that. So if my center is in Iseri in Lagos State, is in Alimosho local government. If I'm a curious child who probably lives in a face my face you apartment, which means my parents are not often around. My mother has probably gone to sell in the market. My father is probably, if he's a responsible one, he's gone to work. If he's not responsible, he's drinking somewhere. Unless I'm a 15-year-old girl trying to, where can I find a library to read? Nowhere. That was why I set up my center. I didn't plan to set up a center. I went there to do an outreach for 900 girls. And I did that outreach in May. I was planning another one in August. And then some of the girls that came to my outreach in May were pregnant. I said, what happened? And then I was hearing things like, I needed money for WAEC. And I had to sleep with someone. I needed this information and this uncle. I needed money for Weavon. That's what upsets me, that made me set up that center. I mean, I'm just an ordinary citizen. But this is the responsibility of all those that we elect, councillors or all of those people. Can we have, where if anybody who is curious wants to move forward in life, and even if they have irresponsible parents, can they have access to libraries? Can they have access, basic things you can read? Can we come together? Can there be reading groups? The people who make the laws, can they make things like tablets available? But if they want to be corrupt, let them justify their corruption. I don't support corruption, but let them give things that are useful. It's not fair to put pressure on the or saying, oh, children they're not computer compliant, and blame them where they fail WAEC because it is a computer aided test, when the girl has never used the computer all her life. The first time she's touching the computer is when she has to write WAEC or when she has to write JAM, CBT. It's unfair. So, a lot of these things, we need to think through it. If the poorest of us cannot access basic tools, as a country, we have failed. It's not that anybody can travel out and, get a scholarship. How many? We need libraries. We need community resource centers. We need mentors that we can see, not the mentors that just, you're chasing online. You need real mentors that can sit down with you, that can say, I remember one of the girls in my center, she had never seen a female doctor. So when I asked them one of our sessions and said, what do you want to become? And some girls were saying they wanted to be doctors. This particular girl is very fierce. She said, look, a girl cannot be a doctor. Girl, nurse, male, doctor. At the end of that session, I called her and sat her down and tried to convince her. I'm talking about 2016, so it's not anywhere very far. I tried to convince her that there are females who are doctors. She said, no, Auntie Motala, I don't believe you. My mommy told me male doctors, female nurses. How did I fix that problem? I had to get 3 of my friends who were female doctors to come around so she could see them, she could touch them, know they are real, and then she could ask them questions. Would you blame her? Now, this is her mindset, and she was going to continue to grow. Sarah, she was going to continue to grow like that. God knows. So how many of them are scattered like that? We need real people who will come into the community, who would showcase what is possible. If you want to be a data scientist, who are you modeling? Someone says they want to be a doctor. The first time they really get around the hospital, the only time they go to the hospital is when they are sick and they go to see a doctor. There isn't a time where they can. We organize for some of our girls, go and spend 1 day with a doctor and make up your mind. Decide if that's really what you want to do. Some go and they say, I really don't want to be a doctor anymore. I didn't know this is what they used to do. Some go and go like, this is what I really want to do. So we need those. That's how we can really, education has to be practical. Children need to go on excursions, but these things have to be funded by communities. It needs to be funded by governments. Government needs to provide this, and then there needs to be policies that determine the quality of education, minimum hours of instruction. And then it's not just what the teacher teaches, but who is supervising what the teacher is teaching. And then the students also, I recall in secondary school, they would ask us to tick. There was a small book they gave us, I think it was in boarding school, where we tick, teacher was present but did not teach. Teacher was present but wasted time, It was a regulatory tool. I think it was given to but that way every teacher knew that if you come and you do not this the way, we will lack present but do not teach. Yeah. So there has to be monitoring all round. Let me stop here.
Yeah, you overshot the boundaries by another 5 minutes. But I can understand the sentiment. These issues are not things that we can actually brush over through summary talk. While you were talking about education, I did a research recently and found that Nigeria is not spending up to 7% national budget on education. Ghana is funding education much more than we do. South Africa is doing that. Kenya is doing far, far higher. Rwanda is almost the top in terms of funding education. In Africa, we can't begin to talk about the Maghreb countries of Egypt, Tunisia, Algeria. And so if we must indeed be giants, somebody said, okay, it was the former emir of Kano, Sanusi, who said over the weekend in Kaduna that Nigeria is a giant with clay feet. Now, as funny as that sounds, but that's the truth. And we can't paint this any other way. So, Dr. Mo, our governments at every level are obsessed with infrastructural development. In Kano today, There are bridges everywhere. A friend of mine came in from Abuja, and I had to ask him to meet me at the restaurant. He was looking for the place. This is somebody who grew up in the town, because bridges everywhere. Dr. Mike, somebody dropped at Bata from Abuja, and he was asking people in that place, where is Bata? He was lost. he was lost. He was standing in the place. Yes, he was standing in the place he was looking for. We have the longest land bridge in Nigeria is in Kano, stretching almost 3 kilometers.
Wow.
All right. So there is an obsession for bridges in Nigeria and underpass. Okay. We focus on that more than on developing human capital. There are millions of Nigerians, more than half of the population of our country, who are not literate. This is a huge burden on governance generally. As a leader of Nigeria, how can you change this tide within 8 years? Dr. Mo, you have 3 minutes.
It's a simple reorientation and priority program. Development is not thin veneer. Development is not building bridges. Development is not building houses. Development is, like Omotola said, development is using what you love the most to change what you hate. Development is setting an agenda of hope for a nation. Development is turning on the tap and seeing water come. Development is having electricity to read. Development is not winning election. It is not coming out to speak and say, I've been there, I've gone there. That's not what development is. Development is having internet for our children. Development is having the things you need in the center as you can have them in the local government. This is what development is. So my wife returns back from Rwanda just 2 days ago. And she said, I thought that when I go there, I'm going to see tall buildings like Dubai and all of that. Same thing with my friend who returned back from Ghana. I have been to at least about 20 African countries. And I can tell you that in the measure, because Nigeria, you look at Lagos and Abuja, we've done a lot of concrete jungles. But yet, what development is, we don't have it. Because see what will happen at the end of the day. So we get people to come and build bridges from China. So we get Russians to come and build Ajaokuta steel. At the end of the day, what we have done is underdevelop ourselves, because development is our own builders building our bridges, our own engineers building our road and our houses, our own tailors building our clothes. This is what development is. Any other thing that we do, development is attending our own hospitals. Development is growing our own crops and feeding our people. This is what development is. That is why if you go to before Mama Gaddafi died, once you are 21, you have a house, a 2 or a 3 bedroom to yourself. Libya was 88% literate. That's why, just like Egypt and other places, the reason why we cannot have a revolution in Nigeria is because we don't have development. At best, what we have, we don't build our cars, we don't even feed ourselves. Even with the things, the rice that Kebbi has produced, Nigeria still import more than 70% of the rice that we grow. These are not development. The priorities of what development is has to be thought again. We have to know it again. He's not winning an election because my president thinks that he has won. He's the president of Nigeria. That is not development. Development are the little things that we do, that we need to do, that will keep a community and a nation going. Because when that is done, even when the bridges collapse, we will not have to go to Russia or China to get the people to do it.
Thank you.
We will not have to go to China to get new funds into Nigeria. We will not have to go to China and America to get the loans. Development is converting the potentials into kinetic. It's carrying the natural resources of Africa and turning them into product. This is what development is. This is what I would do as a leader and president of Nigeria.
And that's how we should train our people to handle our stuff. Somebody got very angry when a traditional ruler said about his government that he's trying to build a train track, this metro line in a town, from a residential area, passing across residential places to another residential area. And all of the commercial areas were left out.
Oh boy.
And so the traditional ruler, who is actually an intellectual, I don't want to call names, and he made a speech and said that in his state, that people are trying to take a train, that China is trying to build a train of $10 billion that will take people from their residence in Naibawa and take them to Hadeja Road for weddings and naming ceremonies. Of course, they started investigating the traditional ruler. As I speak, he has been dethroned. So you can understand what I'm talking about. So Chinese will run the train tracks. Chinese will collect the fees, the train fare, as is the case in the Abuja-Kaduna train track. As a matter of fact, I went by that train in 2018. I enjoyed the trip, but as we speak, the train now breaks down between Kaduna and Abuja. Have you ever seen where train? They say the train has a fault, and people came down in the bush waiting. That can only happen in Nigeria, but it's okay. It's okay. We are setting a hope agenda, so I don't want us to get too carried away with the negative narrative, even though sometimes we can't help it. All right, Dr. Mike, as a medical practitioner and having served in the Nigerian health sector for over a decade, how can we build capacity going forward in the critical, essential health sector, for instance? So use your solution as a template for your solution in the health sector. We will take it as template for other sectors. So you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. I'll be brief. My interest is healthcare as a pathway for national development. Why? Because healthcare and security are the fundamental infrastructure that must exist before there's a government. If those two are not provided, there's no government. When you look at what we call developed nations, the first rule, I'm sure one of what Omotola will have noticed moving to Maryland, is that the public health system is so extremely well developed that people that do public health, to paraphrase, have nothing to do.
True.
When a deer, that is like a goat, dies around the bush of my street, there are those that will come and carry the goat, so that whatever disease the goat is carrying doesn't touch human beings. Now, what must we do to build capacity?
We see dead bodies on the streets of Nigeria and we pass by.
What must we do to build capacity? One, recognize that development is development of people and attitudes. I am not sure I have seen any residential road around. I was living around in Chevy Chase, DC before moving to Maryland. I am not sure I've seen any residential normal street road that was as wide as my street in Kano. But everybody has a mental infrastructure to have the appropriate driving behavior. So even though the roads are narrow, you simply have more street lights. Traffic still flows. So development is not building bigger roads. It is building better drivers. I'll use the case in point of Ibadan, Mokola roundabout. If you are going from UCH to Sabo, from UI to what's election lawyer, they built something there that they called an overhead, whatever, and built one roundabout. As traffic improved, it remains to be seen. Underneath that place now becomes where pickpockets and back snatchers operate. Has there been development? That is similar in the healthcare sector. The fundamentals must be done. One, we must ensure there's a national uniform standard for primary education. That is where basic hygiene is taught. A child that finishes primary 6 in Zango Kataf, in Odeomu, in Aguleri, or in Chibok must have attained a similar, as far as is a similar standardized level of knowledge and skills by the time he qualifies. I remember when I was in primary school, apart from writing the primary 6 exam locally, we wrote like a statewide exam that was like your WAEC, that qualified you for primary 6 living certificate. You don't simply pass in your school and qualify. This must apply up to nursing schools and medical school. In the United States, regardless of where you schooled, before you enter specialist training, you write a unified exam called USMLE. That way, whether you trained in Russia, Abuja, Johannesburg, or Washington, you have a standardized way of saying this is your common base of knowledge. Nigeria does not have that. Every medical school conducts its own final exams. Yes, there's a council that oversees those exams, but it does not translate to an house officer, a fresh doctor from Lagos University Hospital and from Meduguri should have a way of standardized way of knowing you will have the same level of knowledge. Same thing applies to every cadre in the healthcare sector. That's number one. Number two, you have to do massive streamlining of personnel. Too many, I won't call them health workers, I call them workers in health institutions are redundant. Why do I need a messenger in a federal teaching hospital? Why do I need a typist in a federal teaching hospital? Some things are just that basic. We spend 74% of our healthcare budget on personnel costs. And lots of that goes into paying staff who are redundant. There are places where staff have spent 2 years with no clear schedule of duty and move from public health to engineering to accounting. For God's sake, kill us up and down. So we need to train appropriately. Thirdly, curriculum development for the medical courses. And I speak nursing, pharmacy, physiotherapy. Forgive if I didn't mention your profession. For all the professions in the healthcare cadre. Why do I say this? When I was in 400 level in UCH, I was privileged to be a member of a panel that included a professor from Harvard University, my esteemed professor Olatokunbo Lucas, and my trainers in UCH Ibadan, and some of my senior colleagues. And everybody seemed so fine that Ibadan was producing world-class graduates who are going to Harvard and University of London as scattering ground. And I was looking at them like this. And I said, sir, I beg to disagree. I may be young, but am I training? Mind the UCH is funded by the Nigerian federal government. Am I funding UCH to train doctors to treat people in Canada, California, or London? No. I'm training them for Idi Anyure. So, do we have any committee that does a demographic projection? What illnesses will doctors see in the next 20 years? Because if I'm training a doctor today who will spend 6 years in medical school, I can't train him for diseases that were most prevalent 6 years ago. By the time he's a specialist, he's already 10, 15 into the future. So how are we doing health data and prognostication? To do that, again, the fundamentals, we must have a census. We must know how many people we are going to budget for before we can budget for them. So those are the key essential things we must do. Basic education must be uniform standard across the country. Why do I say that? Because I went to primary school in Osogbo. I practiced in Abuja and Kano. A healthcare worker must be like the military, able to be mobilized anywhere in the federation or its territories. Therefore, the standards of education, primary school, secondary school, nothing like differential cutoff for entering university for some courses or secondary school. If the cutoff point is 200 for JAMB, in any university in Nigeria, nobody should be below that. If cutoff point is 200 for linguistics, everywhere in Nigeria, nobody should be below that. The reason you go to different universities should be local preferences and other issues, specialties, who are the eminent professors who are present that you gain knowledge from, not because of catchment area. So once you ensure that basic education, I keep saying basic education because my apologies to my colleagues in Kano and Abuja, doctors say sentences like there is no any. You read case notes written by doctors and every paragraph, they are grammatical cluster bombs and intercontinental ballistic missiles. The appreciation of even medical knowledge will not be the same if all of us don't understand English the same way. It is different if I'm learning herbal medicine in Djibouti and it's in Yoruba. That's a different thing. But when
maybe they learned medicine, maybe they were trained in medicine in Nupe language.
That will be fine. But if I'm going to communicate with somebody and read medical textbooks at school in English, we must be able to say words that mean the same thing. That sounds kind of extreme, I know. But I'm using that to drive home the point that uniform standards of education. Thirdly, we need to, and I'll use medicine because I went to medical school, I didn't go to nursing school. We need to streamline the medical curriculum. While it is true that you need to build on basis, we must also, as far as possible, eliminate medical students learning things they might not really need. Teach them the fundamentals to build on, but don't over-labor them with what they will forget in 2 years' time and not use in 10 years' time. Medicine has one of the highest rates of suicide world over. I had classmates who had mental breakdowns. I had nightmares from medical school, from my final exams, for up to the 7th, 10th year after I left medical school. People should not go to school with mental trauma. Streamline the curriculum, shorten the time. The average doctor, when there are no strikes whatsoever, spends 6 academic sessions, which in some instances is up to 9 years in medical school. Then you spend time, although now it's getting better, looking for placement for internship, your next level of your education. Then you are mobilized by NYC. You are then advised whether you'll be kidnapped or not. That is a different scenario.
But that reminds me of some underlined pamphlets that Omotola was.
I'm sorry, I don't want to yab government. That is not. So I'm trying to control myself. Now, from what I said earlier, if you go to anywhere in Nigeria, almost half of hospital visits are for basic illnesses. Everybody in Nigeria knows typhoid and malaria, even if that is not what the person has. Therefore, it means that every medical graduate in Nigeria must have a level of public health knowledge, must have a level of health administration knowledge, must have a level of public administration knowledge, all those kind of other skills that is beyond undergraduate level. So if it means shortening medical school from 6 years to 5.5 years, shortening NYC for doctors and healthcare workers from 1 year to 9 months, adjusting internship from 1 year so that you can have an extra year where you are drilled in community practice, in public health, in communication, in leadership, in finances. Why do you think everybody is arguing now that doctors should no longer be the chief executive officers, medical directors of hospitals? Because they feel that doctors are not properly trained to manage healthcare institutions or to manage healthcare systems. So why should they be minister for health? Why not a pharmacist? So our emphasis should go beyond teaching strictly medical skills. Conserve the time spent on part of NYC for doctors, frankly speaking, apart from the fact of mobilizing urgently needed national resources, may not be necessary because you're also delaying them from going to full practice. Then I must add this. I know my doctor colleagues in Nigeria will be angry with this statement, but I've held this position since I was in medical school. It is very common that a doctor finishes training, finishes internship and NYC, a year or two maximum, he starts specialist training. I think that is wrong. Why do I say so? If 70 to 80% of the problems of our healthcare system are primary healthcare based, then we must have a heavy emphasis on primary care practice. Secondly, if the government is subsidizing or fully investing in the training of doctors, the government must have requisite returns of its investment. I believe that doctors must be forced, allow me to use that word, to spend at least 2 or 3 years in general community practice under whatever government, federal, state, or local government, again, under uniform standards, before you are permitted to go into residency training, so that we don't lose you for 5 years to a subspecialty. Again, for most of the subspecialties, a major problem is late presentation. So the more primary care people that we have who will easily screen these people before it becomes serious. Let me just give you a simple thing. You were asking me in Kano why it took me so long to go into residency training.
Yeah.
In UCH, I was subgroup captain. We were in what we call Otumba Tunwashe emergency ward. That's the children emergency ward. And a child came, brought from around Ojo to UCH. That's quite some kilometers. At around 2 a.m. And because they could not pay, we could not start doing anything. I'd raised so much money from my classmates that they had donor fatigue and were not willing to donate. So we lost this child. And I asked myself, I'll spend 20 years of my life to become a professor for what a simple intervention at the primary care level will have healed. Why should I be a pediatrician who is treating diarrhea? Why should I be a pediatrician who is treating malaria? Should severe malaria even exist in Nigeria? So we need to reorientate our thinking. Thirdly, is now to move in the appropriate resources for ongoing training. Nigeria is entering an existential crisis. Too many of our doctors and nurses are leaving the country. I took an informal survey of medical students in UCH 2018, and up to 1/4 of final year students had active plans for examinations to leave the country. Yet, we don't have enough doctors. There was an exam that you take to begin residency training in Nigeria, that's specialist medical training. At a particular exam, there was no candidate. Let that sink in. because people believe that postgraduate medical training in Nigeria has some problems that they will prefer not to go through. So even at postgraduate medical level of education in Nigeria, several changes need to be made. You hear of professors who do procedures in rooms where there are rats jumping about, go to another center that is more polished than them and deny those centers the right to train specialists. I mean, you go from somewhere that is worse to where is better and say the people who are better are not qualified to train, but you who is worse is qualified to train. Those are the practical realities of medical education in Nigeria. And that applies across different cadres. We need to have these things addressed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mike.
Sorry, one more thing. You told me to link this to the overall system.
Yes.
Now, again, development, first things first. Why are we building universities with multiple buildings? It is a nice thing to do. However, why have we not attained local content in eraser, sharpener, and pencil since I was in primary school? Development in our educational system begins from being able to make eraser, sharpener, and pencil locally.
We're told by the Minister of Science and Technology that by the year 2018, we should have a pencil manufacturing firm in Nigeria. I think that has not happened yet. It's one of the promises that has not been kept.
Now, we need to take, well, I won't say, let's assume we are the government. I don't want to say bad about the government. I want to set a hope agenda. But that hope will not be based on fantasies. For every sector of the economy, we need to do first things first. If you are going to build 3-kilometer land bridges and cross corner and under corners and tunnels, it is great, but ensure that everybody who drives a car has the appropriate training to drive a car. And that a driver's license actually means that you've learned some basic skills and attitudes that lead to driving. If you build bridges and roads without properly trained drivers, what you will have is more car accidents and loss of life. So development will not happen. That's even before we get to the issue of whether the cement or the steel is made locally or not. That's a different thing. But
let's not go there.
Yeah, exactly. Do the fundamental things first. Do them well. Everywhere. Every time. Have a published roadmap that you disseminate to everybody. And let us have a mechanism for holding ourselves accountable for getting those jobs done. The campaign we should have on whether you should vote for me as executive governor of Oyo State or vote for Madmo as, let me just call you governor of Oyo State, should be the pathway to achieving that objective. Should not be the same objective. So both of us should not come to campaign and say, I will build roads in 4 years' time. I will build schools. That is what we're campaigning about in 1957. We shouldn't campaign about that now. What we should say is, okay, we know we must spend this amount of money on healthcare and education and security. What is the best way to raise money to fund this thing without making our grandchildren indebted forever? Then the argument on whether you should vote for me or Madmo should be who has the best plan for raising money and achieving those objectives, not on who will achieve. No. That is too basic. We shouldn't be asking ourselves that, should we eat breakfast or should we not eat breakfast? The question should be, what should we eat for breakfast?
Eat.
We shouldn't say, should I wear clothes or not wear clothes? should be what should I wear for clothes. So start with the fundamentals. We must wear clothes. We must have health. We must have this. Next step, how do we fund it? Because all these things require funding. And I make bold to say that even if we plug all the leakages in Nigerian system today, from local government to federal government, and we spend strictly what is available, we may not have enough to fund the development that we want. So two things then have to happen. After defining fundamentals, we must now prioritize what comes first. Then secondly, we must look for innovative means of raising funds within the economic system. Like I have to tell you, sir, when Nigeria's GDP was about $500 billion, our budget for health was approximately $1 billion. The total budget of the federal government at some point, as to my knowledge, I may be wrong, I will need this to be fact-checked, has not been more than $15 billion. $15 billion. $500 billion economy. Simple arithmetic. You can get more from that economy than from the budget. So what do we need to extract from the economy? Closing points, sir, with funding. Take a look at Big Brother Nigeria. People spend 30 naira per vote and think of how many billions are generated. Can we have a Big Brother for funding malaria? Or primary education? Or basic skills for market women? These are the things that we have to look at and start having constructive engagement and discussions on social media, in families, in groups, and in politics. Constructive engagement. Not simply, I want to speak better than you so that I'll go and get a contract to build a flyover that is made of defective material and that will collapse under 10 years. Look at how many new roads in Nigeria last 5 years. Meanwhile, those roads have inbuilt in their contracts 5-year, 10-year maintenance. Why do they still have pothole? Do you remember how many times the road from Abuja to Lokoja was budgeted in under the federal government? I at least listened to 5 different budgets that had that road presented. Is that road complete today?
All right. Let's have our closing thoughts, because as it were, I'm going to ask us to have this conversation, setting a Hope Agenda 2.0 after the independence celebration this weekend. We should have it next week so that we can explore other areas that we're not able to talk about. So on economic revival, some of the things that we've talked about here this evening has touched on the different sectors of our economy. If you want to improve the economy, you ensure that the health is in proper place, education has to be top-notch, and then you're building forward, a better nation, a better economy. And when you develop the youth, security is enhanced. So for our closing thoughts, I'd like to ask Omotola, and we're looking at the economic issues now, but that will form the basis of our closing thoughts. Omotola worked among youths, she still do. You know that over 75 million Nigerians are under the age of 30. Now, most of these are graduates, most of these young people are graduates who are unemployed. The combined unemployment rate, unemployment and underemployment, as at last Monday, is 41% in Nigeria. Now, when duly empowered, herein lies Nigeria's wealth. But left on their own, they are a huge liability we cannot afford to carry. So what can we do in Nigeria today to change the tide and turn the liability into assets? critical assets?
Thank you very much for that question. I'm still soaking in from what Dr. Lagbero said because it was a lot, but thank you very much for that contribution. I agree that our young people are unemployed or underemployed or unemployable in some situations. I think let's begin with the industry and school disconnect. So what you learn in school is completely different from what the industry demands. I think that we need to start having real adjunct professors teach in schools. So all the CEOs, the entrepreneurs in Nigeria, people who have run real businesses, real, not imaginary, not traders,
Not government contractors.
not contractors, who have run businesses, who have built systems, should be invited periodically into the classrooms, because then they can bring field experience to the academic conversation. That's one. That disconnect is real, and it's the reason why we have people graduate and they tell you, I don't know what to do. I don't know what job. I have a degree, I have a certificate, because there is no direction. And I find it really sad when people blame the youths. You can't blame the victim of anything, because the education is the responsibility of the government or the society. Not just the government, but society. Going back to the people who write our curriculums, there needs to be projections. What type of people would we need in 10 years? And start training them for that. For example, why, in addition to our basic education, don't we have standardized processes for vocational skills training? I have a degree in history and international relations. I've also studied other things, but I trained when I was in 200 level as a massage therapist. And I have always carried my massage therapy skills. I have my massage couch here, even in this my space. I still deliver services. I'm a trained massage therapist, it doesn't make what I do inferior. But it looks like we've had those conversations about, a plumber is inferior to this person. A gardener is inferior to someone who went to school. Those type of conversations are what make people poor. Because the cook, the driver, the hairdresser, they make more money. So we need to have, work that in. Because if we're going to, I worked in DMT toilets. In DMT toilets, we sell mobile toilets. But my boss there used to say, I'll say it in Yoruba and say it in English. He says, "Oh, back your room." So what it means is that the fact that I pack shit, the money spent from it doesn't smell. So it doesn't matter what you're able to do. People need to learn skills that are economically viable. We need to train, what do we need for the future? So there's no course curriculum that teaches content development in the universities. There's no course, I don't know right now, that teaches social media management. But those are real skills, real tools, and real jobs available. Nobody is teaching you data, as a data scientist, management and information systems. Those are real jobs, real vacancies that are constantly in demand. But the school hasn't trained you for it. So the industry and academics need to come together. There also needs to be active, and I say this very deliberately, active internship. Active internship from your 100 level. Once you get into school in 100 level, whatever it is you are planning to become, I think for professions like law and medicine and maybe engineering, they get to go on industrial training for 1 year or 6 months. All other courses, like my course, I did history and international relations. My education was self-motivated. So even though I did history and international relations, my dad was the one who said, well, you need to learn a second language to be international. If not, your international relations is a joke. My dad sent me to Alliance Française. I went to learn French. While learning French, I heard there was a place called Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. And then I visited. And I started spending time there every holiday I had. But that wasn't a requirement from my school. You know, we never visited any embassies. Why are we doing international relations? You understand? So when you graduate, you don't even know what you want to do. I remember till the final, I kept asking, maybe will I now become a history teacher? But I don't really like teaching history, you know, because there is nobody who is telling you this is a career path. So there needs to be active internship. Once people leave school or go on holidays, let your holidays be you attaching yourself to something. Start learning. You know, I worked in television. I worked in consulting. Before I went for NYC, I interned at a consulting firm. And it was my internship in that consulting firm that gave me, I was 21 when I left Ife, but that was what gave me confidence that I could work as a consultant. What I learned while waiting for NYC, I worked in a place where we're training bankers, and it was a small consulting firm. So you need to develop content, you need to print, you need to develop your slides, you need to prepare questionnaires. I was 21. I remember the days I would run into the bathroom and I would cry. This adult thing is just too much. And one of our consultants would say, well, that's what it means to grow up. Now wipe your face and get to work. But, so I consider that a privilege. By the time I went for NYSC, I had the confidence to engage all the banks in Lokoja then. I trained all of them. Because in Lagos, we have trained several of them on customer service. I'll walk to a branch manager. I can train your staff. Oh, what have you done before? I show what you've done before. Are you serious? Yes. 2 days, 3 days. I was earning good money as a core member. So people need skills. Remember I said I was a massage therapist. During weekends, there is always a golf tournament happening somewhere. So I used to go to Abuja. There was also a golf tournament, IBB golf course. There is one in Otukpo. I can't remember the name. Then there's another one in Ada. That one's close to my village. Because in 3 days, we make a lot massaging people. When I finish Sunday evening, I come back to Lokoja, resume my work at UNDP focal office. Nobody knows what I did. You need skills that are convertible to money. So I just think that conversation needs to happen. People should train for skills that people need. So yeah, what people need. What is the industry looking like?
And today's jobs.
Today's jobs, not just things from the past. Or people should not pride yourself. A certificate is not a right to a job. A certificate is evidence that you passed through school and an opportunity to be invited for an interview. What you do or say at the interview then determines if you qualify to be employed. But saying I'm a graduate, I can't do this. You know, how are people trained for the jobs of the future? I will send you a particular document after this that shows details of gaps, jobs that are needed, and the deficit. It's an organization I'm currently working with and saying that how can we train African young people in particular to be able to do certain jobs between now and 2050. But we need to pivot, not look at the areas that we are looking at currently.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mo. You will give this a last shot. Dr. Mike is not speaking anymore.
Oh, I'm available. I'll just control what I say.
All right. From your vantage position, Dr. Mo, as an activist who has worked also with young people and still do, as president, what will you do immediately and subsequently to engage with this challenge and turn things around, especially how you may turn the youthful energy that has got the skills and translate it into economic gains for the country?
It's like I said earlier, and listening to Omotola, I will have a thousand and a million of her kind back into the country. We'll reverse the drained brain immediately, also because, you see, this is so sweet in the 21st century. I mean, like Dr. Mike was saying, it is not only that we should not campaign building roads and bridges. It's actually a crime in 21st century to come to say that you want to build this and do that with our own money. You are a criminal. You'll be jailed for even saying that in the first place. So it's even a no-go zone. What makes it very interesting is that if you look, I mean, the data are already there on social media and everywhere. The anger and the passion is all over the place. But the youths that are not skilled are willing to learn. The ones who are skilled are begging for jobs. Just put up an advertorial for job and see what is going to happen. The last we checked, people died in their hundreds just because they were looking for immigration jobs. Look at the fight against the insurgency. Our soldiers have been court-martialed because they are looking for better weapons. The youths are more than willing to be trained. They are more than willing to be engaged. We just don't have visionary leadership. So I can almost bet you that all the doctors, all the physicians, all the pharmacists, the engineers, and all the skilled people who have left this country, they'll all return back immediately. Because there are things I wouldn't say because we are having a discussion here. But we practically do not have a country right now. Like we have said, almost like sounding like a broken record. If you have a particular road being put in the budget over the past 10 years, it tells you the level of wastage. So we are more than ready as a nation. And the more than half of the population are already, energy is bubbling and it's already there. We're going to channel them into every area, from agriculture to banking to social media skills to everything, and then to finance, to all the new tech, to nanotechnology. We're going to train people, and like I said, the tools are already ready. What are the tools? The same young people, is to convert these robots, this passion, these energies that we have. All that we need to do is to paint the vision, make it clear, so they that read it will run with it. Thank you.
All right. On that note, I like to appreciate everyone on the panel. Dr. Michael Olagbenro, Motola Fawumi, Dr. Moses Paul. I cannot thank you enough. You have effectively spent with me 2 hours, 10 minutes, as against the 90 minutes that we had projected. But it's all for good. I like to thank you so much for giving, of your time. And we trust that Government TV will have you again very soon. We must continue to engage these issues. We must continue to be proactive. We must continue to put these discourse in the public space, because words have power, words are spirit, and they take a life of their own and begin to, manifest. So we must not stop talking. A society that stops talking, that gives up, is on its way out completely. And so I'd like to thank you for all of you joining us from everywhere around the world. We appreciate you. Until we come your way again on Thursday, on behalf of my panelists, I'd like to say thank you so much for spending your time with us. We appreciate you. Have a lovely night and stay out of trouble.